Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. I'm Abram Kielsmeyer-Jones, and this is Translation Notes, Mark 14:26 through 31. This is part 2. We covered the first 4 verses of this section 2 weeks ago. I've been away. I'm back now, and this is going to wrap up this passage. We're just going to look at 2 new verses today, but we're going to do a little bit of review of last time and talk especially about how this word Pontes is a connecting theme. I've mentioned that before, but we'll see it even more today. So I'll talk about that as we review verses 26 through 29, and then we'll look at 30 and 31. I actually found a really interesting question that came up in translating the word Kai here in 1430. So occasionally we do spend some more time on these words that we often just translate quickly, but this provides an interesting case study in those times where we actually need to spend a little bit more time to see what the best translation is. So we'll spend some time on Kai today. The question being, can Kai mean but, not just and? So that will be one focus, and then we'll look at the rest of both of these verses. This handout that you see on my screen is available to you in the GoToWebinar control panel. That control panel is the interface that you ought to see as soon as you log into this webinar. If you are joining us, watching on a recording afterwards, because we are recording today, you can find this handout at tinyurl.com/marktranslationnotes, and anyone can email me at abramkj@accordancebible.com. Whether you want this handout or have a follow-up question or comment, I welcome any correspondence. If you've got questions or comments today, there's a questions box. If you're here live, you can type any questions or comments there. At any time, I'll respond either privately or I'll anonymize your comment and respond publicly. I always benefit from folks' feedback and questions and insights as we work through this text together. If you've been to this translation notes session before, you know that we focus especially on lexical and grammatical questions that come up. And so today we get a lexical question with the word Kai. We get grammatical questions like aeon, the word that anticipates the subjunctive, and how the infinitive, for example, uses the accusative as a sort of subject, even though the accusative we think of as an object. So we'll look at those more in detail, but those are the kinds of questions that we explore in this series. Let's review with Mark 14:26 through 29. It says, and after singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. This is talking about Jesus and his disciples. Of course, we are inching close to the end, both of the book and of Jesus's life, and of course it ends with the resurrection. So after singing a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, you will all fall away, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep will be scattered. But after I am raised, I will go before you into Galilee. But Peter said to him, even if everyone falls away, yet I will not. So we have this all fall away motif here in verses 27 and 29, and we looked last time at the word scandalizo, and you can see here we get the English word scandalized from this, and that's not a bad translation, but I think we want to go further than just that here and explore the context to get the best, most precise nuance we can. And so we spent some time on that last time. I've just done the kind of safe fall away. I think you could get more specific than that. But the point I made last time was that you want to translate it the same way in verse 27 and 29, because scandalizo is the same word. So however you decide to translate that, and again, you could go back to the recording for last time if you want to see more, we want to keep it consistent. In fact, I'm noticing even now, let me just get a new text open here. So I'll open up the NA 28, and we are in Mark 14. I'm noticing even now that we've got not just scandalizo, but we've got the Pontes here both times. So notice the match here between subject And it's same subject, same verb, same subject, same verb here in 29. So Peter is basically quoting Jesus and saying, even if what you're saying is true, it's not true for me, which is inherently contradictory. Everyone means everyone, and yet he's an exception. What I'm noticing right now is that in my translation, and I would modify this, I had all here and everyone here. They mean the same thing. It's not a big deal, but I would actually want all to match with whatever's here. So either all fall away, verse 27, and then even if all fall away in verse 29. That should match, I think, just to show that Peter is essentially quoting Jesus. So if it's possible to be consistent like that, which often it is, I would recommend it. So that would be a change I might make here in my translation. So you will, you will all fall away. I don't know that you could do you will everyone fall away. So I would just match the all down here, even if all fall away. And then you've got basically bringing out more clearly in the English that Peter is quoting Jesus. So there is this question, this recurring theme, and we've looked at it before. We'll see more of it today. Mark will even end the section here, ending in verse 31 with this theme. The question is, who will fall away or scandalize or betray or deny Jesus? And again, we've got a robust set of options for what this word means here, but this is a recurring theme. And the answer to this is in verse 27. Jesus says, you all, pantes, all. And that is a 100% word. Peter now is arguing in verse 29, and we started in on this last time, even if everyone, pantes, falls away, or even if all fall away, yet I will not, uk ego. And again, this is inherently contradictory. What you might consider, though, is that in Peter's mind, he's not being logically contradictory. What he's saying is, even if everyone else falls away, yet I will not. So he doesn't actually mean everyone, including me, will fall away and I will not fall away. That just doesn't make logical sense. That is how you read all or pantes. But I mention that because you might consider bringing that out in your translation. Maybe you say, even if everyone else falls away, even if all others fall away, yet I will not. Or as I've done, you could just leave it here. And there's even something about this contradiction that I think is kind of interesting here. It really shows you how, even with what Peter is saying, he's not on the right track here. He's not making a whole lot of sense, but his meaning, in his mind, he's making sense, I would suspect. So it means even if everyone else in the whole world would fall away, I will be the one exception. So I'm not included in the pantes. So technically it's not pantes, it's all but one. Ironically, and surely unbeknownst to him, I would think, here already in verse 29, Peter is in a way denying Jesus. Now, we're going to see in this new material today that Jesus is getting very explicit about the denial in verse 30 and 31. So it hasn't been predicted as such yet, but it is foreshadowed with this, you will all fall away, you will all deny. We looked at that as one possible meaning last time. So I find it ironic, and I don't know Mark's mind, but we've been in Mark a lot together over the last few years, and my hunch is that Mark is aware of the irony here and maybe even wants the reader to see it. Of course, the reader only has to read on a verse or two and then even read on a little bit more in the book to see, yeah, Peter is actually going to deny Jesus. So even here already, and this is more meaning and interpretation than something that could come out in translation, but even here already, Peter is contradicting Jesus. So he's denying what Jesus is saying. There's a not that goes with the quotation mark. Jesus is saying all will fall away, and Peter is saying not all will fall away. Jesus is saying everyone, Peter is saying not everyone, or everyone except for me. And you can read that in any number of ways. We could certainly psychoanalyze Peter and ask, what does that tell us about him? It's not the first time he's argued with Jesus about these super meaningful things that are going to happen. But he's also not the only one. And so this theme will come up again today, but I just wanted to bring it up by way of review and introduction that we had in verse 19, this meti ego. I'll go here to just scroll up here. This is when Jesus is talking about the denial, or the, let's see, the sorrow said to them, yeah, everyone said, each to himself, surely not me. And what he had predicted was, here we go, one of you will betray. So there's the verb there. It's a little different. It's paradose, but it's that same family: betray, deny, fall away, desert. That might even be a good word to use here. But they have all denied it. So it's not just Peter, it's all have denied it. And this does not say all pantes, but it does say heis kata heis, one by one, each to himself, to a person, to a man. You could even say that. So it's that same idea. So there's a lot of disagreement happening here in the direction of disciples toward Jesus. Of course, he's disagreeing with them too, but his is, more based on more authoritative knowledge than what they have. So I mentioned this because this theme comes up again today, but there is this interplay between the one and the many. So Peter as the one and the disciples as the many. So there's a shift in focus. I mean, you could just imagine a camera lens being turned clockwise and counterclockwise throughout this passage. It's going back and forth between Peter and all of them. You even had Judas and all of them. So you're getting a close-up view at two individuals, but also backing out to see everyone, and it goes back and forth. You get one of the all of you, and then you get all of them say not me, and then it's Judas, and then Jesus says again it's all of you, and then Peter says not me, and then it's going to end. Actually, I'll just give this now, and all of them said they'll never deny him. So that's a theme to watch for. I think it's really interesting. I'll ask at the end and invite us to wonder what that means in terms of what Mark is doing here. I think it's got implications for his first readers and potentially modern day readers. But that's where we left off last time, with Peter saying, even if everyone falls away, yet I will not. It's one of those verses that I think in Greek is fairly straightforward to translate. It's not very long. We just saw this much going left to right. But Peter said to him, if even everyone falls away, but not I. And so it's not the hardest Greek to translate, but I don't want that to obscure the fact that I think this is a really rich verse thematically. So let's move into new material, although actually I'll just pause there before we do and see if there are comments or questions on anything there. Those themes not only review what came before, but they also preview where we're going to go in just the two verses today. So I'll invite comments, questions, and of course those can come at any time. And if not, we'll move into verse 30. Okay, so Jesus has another rejoinder. Jesus is on a mission, and he knows what his mission is. He's predicted his suffering, death, and resurrection several times already, and he will not be deterred. So we move to verse 30. And I'm going to just adjust my screen. You can go to set text pane display and do show as separate verses with space. And then I've got a little more white space there. All right, kai lege auto ha Jesus. Amen lego soi hatisus semeran taute te nukti prin e dis alectora onesai tris me aparnese. And we're going to go left to right as if this were interlinear, and then we'll talk about how to translate it, and then we'll unpack it. And says to him, so we've got a present tense verb. Of course, it's a past event, but Mark uses this present tense often, especially to describe speech. And says to him, Jesus, truly I say to you that you today, this night, before, and then this A, I think, is Max and Mary in their grammatical analysis of the Greek New Testament. They say that's pleonastic, that it kind of goes with the prin. So before dies, we've got 2 times or twice. Before the rooster sounds, or you probably want crows there to be more specific, but it's from this phoneo, to sound. 3 times me you will deny. And this we see with the sigma there, gives us the future tense. This is future, middle, indicative. You will deny. Now, that's not a very smooth translation if we just go left to right. So let me show you how I've translated it. I've got, but Jesus said to him, truly I say to you that today, this very night, before the rooster crows twice, 3 times you will deny me. This A is in parentheses here because rooster doesn't get a definite article. And so in the absence of an article, when you've got a noun like this in Greek, the default would be a, so an indefinite, so a rooster. If we say the rooster, it's not significant which particular rooster it is, but it's going to be just one rooster. And we use the definite article even in English, to talk about one of a kind, one example of a species, for example. So I might say, consider the sparrow. You may visualize just one bird, but nobody would probably think I'm talking about one specific sparrow. I'm just talking about sparrows in general. So I would do this with the rooster. I would say before the rooster crows twice, but before a rooster crows, that would be acceptable as well. All right, so now let's look at Kai here. And we of course won't spend as much time on every word today, but I do want to look at Kai. If you look at the beginnings of all of the verses in this passage, it's kind of interesting. Now, just scrolling through, we get, looking ahead, we get Kai, 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 Kai. I mean, there's a lot of Kai. And so Mark often begins with that. It's a connecting word. It can mean and, it often does. It can mean even, it can mean also. It can mean, I don't want to say it can mean nothing, but it can be translated with nothing. I mean, you could think of it almost as a capital letter because there was no punctuation. Kai can essentially be saying, here's the start of a new sentence. So it's a flexible word. And we do every time want to ask how to best translate it here. In this case, preceding verse 30 and even going into 31 today, we've got different words connecting the verses to each other, and they're all conjunctions, connecting words. So in verse 28, actually go back to verse 26, it starts with Kai, and then, and in fact, I think I translated that as then, didn't I? No, I didn't. I translated it as and, but then would be another appropriate translation. So you've got Kai, Kai. Now in verse 28, you've got Allah, which is also connecting word, a conjunction. I think but is your best translation there. Same with day here in verse 29. But the flavor or the nuance of these connecting words, these conjunctions, is not just and, there's a contrastive element here. So going from verse 27, you will all fall away, but after I am raised, I will go before you. And so that but is a contrast. You kind of got some bad news here. You're all going to fall away, and even the shepherd will be struck. But after I am raised, I will go before you, so I'll be okay, and you'll come with me. So the but makes sense there. Now, but in verse 29 makes sense too. That's how we translate day, because Peter is arguing with him. So that contrast makes sense there. So then the question for me is, going from verse 29 to verse 30, what's the connection there? How would we describe how the one verse moves into the other? So in verse 29, Peter said to him, even if everyone falls away, yet I will not. Verse 30, Jesus said to him, truly I say to you that you actually will. So that's a but, that's a contrast. They're going back and forth. They're saying different things. So in terms of meaning, what we want here is but. There is contrast here. The question for me is, can Kai be translated as but? A question, so I will answer that today. A question I cannot answer is, why didn't Mark just use day or Allah here? I don't know. Maybe it's just stylistic variation. He could have, but we had ha in verse 29, we had Allah in verse 28, both are translated as but, and then as I say, something similar, contrasting, would be expected here in verse 30. Jesus is pushing right back. So again, the question, how do we translate kai? I don't think and would be wrong per se. You could translate this as in this way, but Peter said to him, even if everyone falls away, yet I will not. And Jesus said to him, truly I say to you. So you can still kind of bring out some contrast, I suppose. I don't think and is wrong. You could also consider it pleonastic, which means it goes untranslated. It's not that we're ignoring it or that we're being any less accurate in our translation. It's just that it may have a function like hati sometimes, basically functions as quotation marks. And so we think about this as starting a new sentence, and that's it. So those are two possibilities. You could do then. Then Jesus said to him. I didn't list that here, but that's a possibility. But in my quest to discover whether or not kai can be translated well as but, I mean, you can see my answer is yes here, because I translated it that way. But consider that and is a connecting word, it's a conjunction, and but is too. We don't necessarily think of them that way, but logically they carry the same value. What I mean, and I put this in the handout, if I say that A is true and B is true, that means that both A and B are true, obviously. If I say that A is true but B is true, that also means that both A and B are true. It just has a different nuance there. A is true but B is true implies maybe you didn't expect B to be true, or maybe B is a further truth that constrains A or something like that. In the world of formal logic or symbolic logic, you even symbolize and but with the same character. So in a purely logical sense, they mean the same thing. So on that basis alone, I would feel comfortable translating kai as but. It does bring out this contrastive nuance. But let me check elsewhere. Let me actually look at some lexicons, and this is where I just note here that we're going to do this live. I want to see, does BDAG ever list kai with a translation of but? If it doesn't, I might second guess this option. And again, I know this is just one word. Maybe this is too far in the weeds for some. Maybe this is what you came here for. But this is a helpful search to do for all kinds of translation anyway. So let me show you. I'm going to go to BDAG, and you could do this with another lexicon as well. But the question I have is, can kai be translated as but? So I'm going to go to my library. I'm going to open BDAG, and I'm going to just type in kai. I could have searched this from the text, but this is easy enough. K-A-I on your US keyboard. All right, so here's kai, and it says conjunction and marker of connections. And now we've got a lot. What we'll see with the numbers in bold, those are the definitions, and then the italics is the translation equivalent. So marker of connections defines what kai is. You wouldn't translate it that way. You would translate it as and. So that's one option. I'm just going to scroll. This is a very long article. Number two, marker to indicate an additive relation that is not coordinate to connect clauses and sentences. So this one is not about connecting clauses, sentences, or verses. It's also likewise. And so that might just come in the middle of a verse. It's not meant to connect larger units of text. It's additive relation, this plus this. So that's and as well, and that's the end. That's it. So I don't see but as a meaning under number 1 and number 2, but this is a very long article, and I'm not going to read it through for the characters but. That would take a really long time. I could, I suppose, but a quicker way to get at this in accordance is if I go to the plus button here, Hovering over that shows you this adds an extra search field. So I've searched this lexicon for my entry, and now I'm going to add another search field, which is, think of it as a sub search within the first search. So I've run the first search already, Kai, and now I'm going to search within that search. So within the entry for Kai, I've just got one hit, so just one entry. So now I'm searching within just the entry for Kai. And again, you can do this with any word. You could do this with scandalizo. Maybe you want to know, for example, I'm just going to duplicate this tab. Maybe you want to know, is scandalizo ever translated as betray? So I will type in scandalizo, same thing. Here's the entry, one hit. And I go to plus, I'll get back to Kai in a minute, but so it's my second search. So I'm just going to search, actually do all English just to save some time. And let's see if betray, and it's not in here. So that doesn't mean that's a bad translation. It just means BDAG doesn't list betray under scandalizo. How about deny? No. So this is just a really helpful way to cross-check some of your translations, to take a Greek word that you've got, maybe take how you've translated it, see if it's in BDAG. If it is, you're usually good to go. If it's not, it doesn't mean you can't translate it that way. It just means you maybe want to give that some thought. It means that BDAG is not attesting, or in its interpretation is not saying that scandalizo ever means deny. All right, back to Kai. So I've got the second search field, and I'm going to do and here. You can change these options, but I want and. So within the entry for Kai, let's look for but, B-U-T. Now, all English is the quickest way to do this, but I could do this even more slowly. English gloss, in fact, when I was preparing for today, I did start here. The English gloss is going to be the translation equivalent. So does BDAG list but as a translation equivalent for Kai? You'll see, and we see it right here, so it surfaces it. See how that turned red when I ran that search? So that's as expected, but is not there as a translation equivalent. Well, what about under definition? Nope. Well, let's try English content, which is going to be all the rest. And this will be, so this is the gloss or the translation equivalent. It's not there. This is the definition, and same with number 2. All the way down here, it's not there. And so now we're going to go to English content, and I'm going to search but. And here I have 16 exact hits. Now, this is going to actually just, the only way to figure this out is to go through it manually, because here's the word but it's not actually describing the word. It's in the middle of a sentence that's talking about Kai. But I will scroll through here slowly, or you can advance by hit if you want. And what I'm looking for is but in translation, and in fact, here it is. It is under one of my, it's under the first definition, marker of connections. And as I said, but is a conjunction with the same logical value as and, but a different nuance. And the fact that it's listed here encourages me that my translation with for Kai as but is just fine. In fact, here it says, emphasizing a fact as surprising or unexpected or noteworthy. And yet, and in spite of that, nevertheless. So there's that contrastive nuance. It is, I don't know if it's unexpected for Peter to argue with Jesus or not. Maybe by this point the readers expect it, but it's, you know, unexpected in a cosmic sense that somebody fallible like that would disagree with Jesus. And here you even have but in a couple of translations for Kai. So that is a long way to say that BDAG confirms that Kai can be translated as but. You could do this same search in other lexicons. You could do a different search, as we did with scandalizo. To use this to search field, this is to search the 2 different fields is to be able to search within your entry for something specific. And this gets pretty detailed, but I do find when I'm struggling with a word that it can really help me see, is this even an option according to BDAG? You know, am I even in the ballpark? And again, in this case, we're in good shape. Another thing you can do too, and I like to do this only after I translate, but you can live click to compare translations. Again, it's not like there's a democratic process where if 5 out of 8, or it's not like there's a quorum for translation that determines something. I mean, different translations have different options here, but I will be encouraged if I see any translation translate Kai as but. I will think, okay, I'm not the only one to think this is appropriate. So for that, I go to live click and just make sure verse lookup is selected. And I will click on the verse 30. And that's going to show me all of my Bibles with a Mark 14:30 in it. I'm going to even just narrow this down to modern texts, because for this I don't need to see Greek or Hebrew. And we've got the ASV, we have and, the Berean Bible, we have nothing, so that's pleonastic Kai. And then here's the Common English Bible, but, and that was the single translation I could find, but it has it there. Some more that don't translate it, so it's pleonastic. We've got and. So really all 3 of those options, I didn't see then anywhere, but all 3 of those options, and, pleonastic, and but are there. And again, in terms of meaning and flow, but I think just makes the most sense. So that was a lot about Kai. I'll just pause there. I mean, that's just one verse or one word in one verse. We'll make our way through the verse, but if you've got comments or questions, I'd love to hear them, especially about the mechanics of getting in and out of your lexicons. This is one area where accordance, I mean, I still love a print lexicon, but it takes so much longer, not necessarily to look it up by entry. I mean, that's a matter of seconds to thumb through and find an entry. Accordance is quicker at that, but what really takes a long time is with the long entry like Kai. If I'm going to look for any use of the word but in that entry, that's going to take a long time. So accordance really speeds up the process here and gets you to the information right away. And then you decide what to do with it. All right, let's continue on in the verse. And says to him Jesus, truly I say to you that you today, this very night. And I wanted to notice that together with you. I put the you later in the verse, you will deny me, because what you've got here is this verb deny, and the subject of it is sue. That's a long separation between subject and verb, especially for English. And so you will see translations pretty consistently saying you will deny me. So it will put the sue with the aparnese. Now, we know by now there's nothing inaccurate or unfaithful to the text in adjusting the word order. I mean, we literally have to, because Greek word order and Hebrew word order and English word order, they all function differently. And so you would have a nonsensical text if you preserved word order. You can look at an interlinear for that, and you can see how it works, and maybe that's a step in the process, but you can't read an interlinear and have it flow. So we feel perfectly fine, I do, and many translations do, putting the you here. What might be lost with that is the fronting of this here, the fact that it comes sooner than the verb. And so I just noticed that and just wanted to kind of think about that and wonder whether that's a marker of emphasis, like, no, Peter, you, actually you, details, will deny me. That's kind of how it reads in Greek. And I thought it was interesting to see, live click again here, that here we're still in 1430. The ASV, the Authorized Standard Version, which reads like the King James, but is newer than it. It's a little more than a century old. And Jesus saith unto him, verily I say unto thee, that thou today, even this night, before the cock crow twice, shalt deny me thrice. Now, it is easy enough to make the case that in 2025, in the year 2025, words like verily and thee and thou and shalt don't necessarily read as smoothly for many audiences. But even accounting for that, putting the thou this early, I think, does kind of throw off the flow of the sentence. However, what I like about it is that it models the Greek in putting the you, the second person, sooner. So if you were to modernize this, it would say something like, truly I say to you that you today, even this night, before the cock crow twice, will deny me thrice, 3 times. So if that works for you in translation, great. Then you've matched the Greek and maybe preserved some of the emphasis. I don't think stylistically that reads terribly well, so I've put it later where I've done, and most other translations do it here too. But we could also just look at this in the, if we went to our diagrams tool. So we've got the you will deny here. I'm sorry, that's verse 30. Here it is. So if you, there's a lot in verse 30. I mean, this is a fairly robust, I mean, this is not just subject at left, predicate at right. It is that, but lots of modifiers. But you can see that the kind of main idea here is you will deny, and then here's the you, su, brought out explicitly. It didn't have to be. Aparnese already includes the subject encoded in it. That's how Greek verbs work. So the su is not only the su is not only separated by words across the Aparnese, it's also fronted, and it didn't even need to be there in the first place. So I do think this is emphatic. But the main idea logically is you will deny me, but we get all this intervening stuff like today and this very night and before the rooster crows twice and 3 times. You get 4 modifying phrases here. It's more than just saying, truly I tell you that you will deny me. And I think there's something about the specificity here that, you know, I read, I don't remember where I read this, but something about how fiction becomes more vivid and more believable as a story when there are specific times and dates given. Not that you're trying to fool someone, but if you're trying to write good fiction, a good story, a good novel, greater specificity leads to greater believability and kind of you know, entrance into the world of the text. And so I think you have this main Lego, truly I say to you, no really, and he proves that by a lot of details. Today, this very night, before the rooster crows twice, and 3 times you'll do it. So all of those modifying phrases tell us more about this su aparnese me, you will deny me. But this is the main idea of the verse. And of course, as we talked about earlier, it matches the theme of the whole passage. Taute te nukti, this very night or tonight. You will see the agreement here between the demonstrative pronoun this, feminine singular dative, and te nukti, feminine singular dative. So this is one of the modifying phrases. We've got semeron, an adverb, today. That's one modifier. This the night or this night. You might do this very night. You might even do tonight. So you've got options here. You can simplify it down to tonight. You can emphasize it with this very night. Do note the agreement though between taute and te nukti, and this helped me when I first saw these 4 words to know what goes with what goes with what. It's not this day. This is an adverb. This goes with night, and you would see that as well in your diagrams. This is a little bit small font here to fit it all, but here you've got today, you will deny, this night, you will deny. So this modifies night. And then aparnese, you will deny, is the last word. I know we're not going over every word in this verse, but it's a grand climax, I think, to a verse with these multiple modifying phrases, and we've looked at that. You will deny me. You will, according to BDAG, refuse to recognize or acknowledge me. There's your translation equivalent, deny. But if you were to ask, well, what does deny mean? Here's a great definition. Max and Mary, from their grammatical analysis, disown or deny having anything to do with one. Now, if you, I think to translate this word really well, what you'd want to do, and you could even just flag this for later, when you see Peter's actual denials, that's going to help define this word. What is it that he says? To whom does he say it? So you may go back after translating those passages. You may come back here and just make sure you've got the nuance you want. But I think deny, I mean, that's a pretty standard translation. It is what the word, I mean, folks would typically think of it this way. But here's some more detail with Max and Mary and BDAG. But notice it's the last word. So logically, grammatically, it's not. I mean, it's logically, grammatically, it kind of sits up as the main idea, driving idea of the verb, but it comes last. And the word order, again, here is important. You've got the emphasis of su and aparnese. This is a lot of words, as I said, to separate an explicit subject that doesn't even need to be there grammatically, and a verb. And I think by the time you get to this verb, I mean, you can, and I don't know if Peter's thinking this in real time, but for a native Greek speaker, I would imagine they're waiting for a verb here. You, today, this very night, before the rooster crows, 3 times, me, what 3 times I will affirm you, Jesus, 3 times I will take a beating for your sake. No, you will deny me. So there's I think a real climax there with not just conceptually, but with that being the last word in this verse with multiple modifying phrases. And this again, just I don't mean to over repeat it, but just to say this theme of denial, betrayal, falling away, the scandal. Is it going to be all of you? Is it going to be just Peter? Is it just going to be Judas? Is it going to be none of you because you're all denying it? That theme is really enforced here by placing this word last in the text. And I say placing the word, I mean, Mark is quoting Jesus. So whether that's Jesus or Mark or both who are doing that for emphasis, it does end on a very loud note as I read it. We'll move on to verse 31. I welcome comments and questions, but just to recap this verse, but Jesus said to him, truly I say to you that today, this very night, before the rooster crows twice, 3 times you will deny me. And again, if it works and you can get it to work, you could say, truly I say to you that you, today, this very night, and so on, so that you're ending with deny me. All right, verse 31. We're back to day. This post-positive, it comes in second position in Greek, but it's first position in English, so we translate it as but. So there's more contrast. We had a day contrast already, so this back and forth is continuing. Let's go left to right in verse 31 first. Let me, okay, great. Let me just reply here. All right, verse 31, ha de ekperisos elale, ean dei me sunapathanen soi, ume se aparnesomai, hosautos de kai pantes elegon. Let's go left to right, and we have to start with day, and again, this is a good example of where word order just has to change. But he, ha, that's Peter, perisos is emphatically, it's an adverb, but Peter emphatically said, or better was saying, that's imperfect, and we'll come back to it. If, or even if it is necessary for me to die with you, ume, so that's a emphatic not, or never, never you I will deny. Peter, by the way, ends his sentence with deny, just like Jesus did. And then we move to hosautos in the same way, or similarly, all of them also said, or they all said the same thing. So we're back to the many. If this camera lens is zooming in and out, the individual and the group and the individual, we're ending with the group, even though you've got this absolute mic drop of a moment where Jesus is predicting Peter's denial. And I think even if you look at section headings you'll see, I mean, that really is what gets the publicity here. In fact, I've even done that myself. Jesus predicts Peter's denial. But what we don't want to lose here is how it ends. They're all saying, I will never deny you. Now, we don't get the same kind of record in the biblical narrative looking ahead that we do about Judas and Peter's betrayal, but they all fall asleep at Gethsemane, so that already will be fulfilled. But what I don't want to lose in this passage that often is read as being so much about Peter, which it is that this is also about all of the disciples. We'll come back to that, but it ends there. So here's my translation. But he, Peter, emphatically insisted, even if it is necessary for me to die with you, I will never deny you. And all of them said the same, or all of them said the same thing. Ekperissos, from BDAG, pertaining to being beyond normal limits, or extraordinarily. That's another word of emphasis, and you get the kind of rising temperature in the space here, the going back and forth, the contrasting, the emphasis, the word placement, and now we just get very explicitly this word. I mean, he's vehemently, you could think about that word, insisting. And so if some of those more subtle clues hadn't made that clear to us, now Mark is being crystal clear. I mean, you can almost imagine like Peter's face being red or his veins bulging out, or it's not that he's like trying to fight with Jesus physically or anything like that, but I mean, he's really he like clenched fists. That's the image here. So that's a good word to look at. It occurs just the once here, so you're not going to be able to do much of a word study in the New Testament. But you've just got this here with BDAG. And so extraordinarily is their translation equivalent. And again, you could look at different translations to see what they do. But typically it's not just used for emphasis, it means emphasis, emphasizing emphatically. So that's in here now explicitly. He emphatically said, elale is from laleo. So as a provisional translation, you might translate it as he emphatically said. The fact that laleo is imperfect here, where I think more often we see Mark use verbs of speaking in the aorist sense, and you could verify that with the count. I haven't verified that, but that's just my kind of off the top of my head. In other words, instead of a one-time aorist, he said this to him. This is a more iterative nuance here. I think potentially, or probably, I would say. Elale, imperfect, he kept saying, is how the NASB gives it to us. Or the NET and the NIV give us insisted. And I like insisted here. It's a single English word that captures the imperfect nuance of elale nicely. So I would translate elale as either kept saying or said again and again. Maybe that feels like too many words for one Greek word. Or I like insisted, one word for one word if possible. That's great. Even with that, there's still the ekperissos. So you can't, what I would not do is try to translate ekperissos elale as one word. In other words, I would not just translate it, but he insisted, because I think that loses this adverb here. And so the way I like to translate this, he emphatically insisted. And maybe that's redundant, or maybe it's just showing how, again, I mean, vehemently. You know, if you wanted to do a little bit more of an interpretive translation, you know, I don't know that laleo is translated deny, but you could say, and again, this would be more interpretive, but you could translate it as, but Peter vehemently denied it, colon, even if it is necessary. Now, something about that, and this might be more something you do in discussion or in a study note, but that would kind of heighten the irony of this whole thing, that he's saying he will never deny Jesus. But even in this moment, he's denying the truth of what Jesus said. I mean, I'll never deny you. Well, Peter, you're literally denying Jesus right now, not in the same way that you will in the future, but you're disagreeing with him. Again, that's interpretive. You may not see it the same way. I may be overreading it, but you could consider that. Again, we might even do our same kind of search there to see, does laleo ever get deny for a translation equivalent? I kind of doubt it, but we would just triple click that and then go to and. I'm going to just search all English for, oops, let's try that again. Once more, triple click elale, laleo, Greek entry, one hit. So now I'm just going to search the Greek entry for all English, and I'm going to search the word deny. Yeah, and it's not in there. That doesn't mean I can't do that. It just means that might be more interpretive of a translation. But whether you translate it that way or not, I do think this irony ought to be brought out if you're doing more than just straight translation with this text. If you're leading a study group, if you're just making your own notes for yourself, I think that is highly ironic. All right, so he is really convinced, or at least comes across that way. And then we get aeon for if. That anticipates the subjunctive. You could see that in BDAG here, somewhere in here. Fundamentally introduces a situation in which given X, Y will follow. And sure enough, we get the subjunctive here, dei, which is present active subjunctive, third person singular. It is necessary. So even if it is necessary, me to die with you. And we've got me and then sunapathanein. That me to die with, that accusative subject I mentioned at the beginning, the infinitive verb, which we've got here, aorist active infinitive, and the ain ending, takes as a quote unquote subject the accusative, me. So who's the actor of this verb, dying with you, dying with Jesus? Well, it's Peter, and he's speaking, so it's me. It's in the accusative case because this is the infinitive, and that typically comes up in first year Greek, but it's always worth mentioning because it feels counterintuitive, at least to me. When I'm looking for a subject in Greek, I'm looking for nominative. So even now, I always do a little bit of a double take when I see this accusative, but when the infinitive is there, it makes perfect sense. So he's saying, even if, or if it is necessary me to die with you, and then we need to fill that out. It is necessary for me to die with you. To die with, by the way, is just apothanein, to die with the soon, with prefix. So you'll notice that root there, die with. Even if it is necessary for me to die with you, which might be too wooden, you could just do even if I must die. It doesn't match the grammar word for word, but it certainly matches the meaning, and it's arguably more natural English. All right, even if, I will never deny you, ume, emphatic, more than just not. You've got this ume, this double negative, not you, I will deny. And we know, or perhaps can remember, that in Greek, the double negative is not like in English, where a double negative often cancels out. It's like subtracting a negative number is the same thing as adding its positive counterpart. Like if I say I don't not want to eat lunch right now, that sort of means, yeah, you want to eat lunch. In Greek, it just builds. So a double negative is emphasis. So it's more than just not. I think never accomplishes that just fine. I will never deny you. And again, Peter ends with aparnesomai. So we've got a very cleverly constructed text and narrative here, or I mean, I say constructed, but direct quotes. So to what extent is Mark arranging it? To what extent is he just quoting them? It's always an interesting question to ask. But as we have the text, you've got this deny word last, just like Jesus did. So Peter too is building, I think, here. And he's got some modifying phrases here too, just like Jesus did. So it all centers around this word for deny. But now Peter is saying, ume, even though you had said, yes, I will deny, and we're very specific about it, in fact, Jesus, even though you said that, I will never do that. Again, the irony is just almost too rich here, that this disciple claiming to never deny Jesus, first of all, he will. We know that from the story, but the irony that even in his claim, there's a sort of denial there, at least arguably. That's not lost on me. And from what I've picked up of Mark, especially over these last few years doing this session with you all, which I've so appreciated, I suspect it's intentional here, or that Mark at least would have been aware of the same thing. So it's, I think, worth bringing out. Anyone you're reading this text with, or making notes for yourself, I think that's very much worth bringing out. And then we'll stop with this. All of them said the same thing. So we're right back to this 30,000 foot view or the zooming out. They're all saying the same thing. And Mark does that not just conceptually, but at the semantic, at the word level. Here's Pontes again. We could take this passage and we could search for Pontes. Let me do it this way. I'm going to search by words, Pontes, and I'm going to just add a quick range. Mark, what are we, 14, 26 through 31. And this will just show me, I'm going to need to do, oh, sorry, hang on. Doing the lexical form here. Here we go. I needed pause. I needed the lexical form. There it is. You will all fall away, even if all fall away, and they all denied it. So if we go up even to verse 26, it was here too. And again, we didn't have all before, but we had the one by one previously. So this theme just keeps coming up, and Mark is using this word as a reminder, I think. They are all just totally in denial about the denial. Again, rich irony there, but it ends here. They all say the same thing, and that's the end of the passage. So I don't want to overemphasize this, but I also don't want to lose that in this passage that is typically called something like Jesus predicts Peter's denial. I think we don't want to lose this ending piece, that it's really all of them that are claiming to never deny Jesus. And while it is true that we don't get individual narratives of all the others denying Jesus, there are at least some senses in which they flee. They fall asleep at the garden. Where are they at the cross? And so I think Mark wants us to see Peter here, but he wants us to see all disciples. And what I'll close with is I also think Mark is likely winking at the readers here, asking them / us if they / we might also ever deny Jesus. And maybe he's inviting his readers, his listeners, his students to consider, would we also deny that we deny him and then deny him anyway? The longer I sit with Mark, the more likely I think this is. So I think this includes Peter, but it also includes the readers. And I think that Mark, Mark often, and commentators will say this, Mark often uses Peter as a stand-in for the disciples. And I think the disciples can be a stand-in for all disciples at all times and all places. And I think that's what's happening here at the end. Now, all of this is more than a translation. You wouldn't put it in translation, but I think it's an important note to make somewhere pretty close to your translation, just to not lose that. But it ends there, and then we'll pick up next time on verse 32. And just to preview that, we get a new section, and they go to Gethsemane. And in fact, we really don't have to wait very long because right here, verse 37, they're sleeping. So I think it was R.T. France we saw last time who sees this as a fulfillment of all of them falling away, whether we want to call that a denial or not. It doesn't say that exact word, but even Peter already here is sleeping, and he's talking to him, but all the disciples are implicated, and we'll look at that more. So this really gets us set up for the next passage. And so I would separate these passages, but only loosely, because there really is this thread that's going to continue. We'll pick it up next time. Again, this handout is here at tinyurl.com/Mark translation notes. You can email me at abramkj@accordancebible.com. If you've got any questions, I always love to hear from folks.